lessons. The next thing I want to share with you is about kalimat. Allah Azza wa Jal wanted to take someone who is lost, who has lost hope, Adam alayhi salam. He's lost hope. And He wanted to give him revelation. And when a human being has lost hope, they need the word of Allah. But the word of Allah is many things. The word of Allah has warnings. The word of Allah has description of Jahannam. The word of Allah has description of Jannah. The word of Allah is halal and haram. The word of Allah describes the munafiqun. The word of Allah describes the kuffar. The word of Allah describes the highest, the best of the believers. It describes all kinds of things. But when somebody is at a loss of hope, which words of Allah do they need? This is the discretion that human beings or believers are supposed to have. At that time, they need the words of hope. They need the words that they can receive, that they can find that Allah Azza wa Jalla will forgive them. Unfortunately, we've forgotten that sunnah of Allah. We say, I'm sharing Quran. Look, the ummah by and large, the ummah is today in a state of hopelessness. Individual people think they've sinned too much that they can't find their way back to Allah. Nations, we feel about nations, we have gone so far away from Allah. We are so corrupt. We have done so much haram. And we're so politically, economically, socially, morally, ethically, we're corrupt, and spiritually we're corrupt on every level, that we are so far from the mercy of Allah. All that should be done now is just throw warnings at people and remind them how they're on a highway to hell. That's what you need to do right now. And I would argue, actually, when people are in a state of hopelessness, then that is the time actually to remind them of Allah's hope. The word shaitan has two origins. It's argued shaitan has two origins. It can come from shatana or shata. If it comes from shatana, it actually means to deviate off the road. Okay? It's to deviate off the road. Meaning he was going fine and he just took a turn, and then he just kept going worse and worse and worse. He spiraled out of control. And shata actually means to lose hope and then to become angry and to become engulfed in flames with anger. So hopelessness turns into rage, and rage engulfs you. Anger engulfs you. A lot of people, a lot of young men that have a sad childhood are very angry young men. There's a direct correlation between sadness and rage. They experience trauma in their childhood or in their youth, maybe from an abusive parent, maybe from an abusive household or a society, and it translates into them becoming very, very angry, abrupt, violent young men. And that's actually the process of what shaitan went through. You're supposed to put the fire out with the words of Allah. Why do you think Allah constantly describes the revelation with the parable of water? Like Quran is compared with the rain in the Quran. Why? Because water puts out fire. It takes away hopelessness. It takes away rage. It brings calmness. It gives life. It refurbishes life. And then the closest thing, the only other parable you'll find to revelation in the Quran is light. So there's either water or light. And these are the two essential components of making sure life exists on this earth. And if you look at it from another way, water is a necessity for purification. It's a necessity for purification. And light is the absence of darkness. Light removes darkness, and all dark emotions, dark feelings, anger, rage, hopelessness, jealousy, these are dark emotions. Light comes and it removes them. And it just sheds light on all of them, and they just, جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. This is the role of the word of Allah, and we have to restore that word, restore that role. There are people who unfortunately have an anger problem themselves. They have a disorder. They have a personality disorder. They're enraged. And they read the Quran, and they teach the Quran and preach the Quran with the lens of rage. So all they can ever cite to you and all they can ever show you is an angry, vengeful God and an angry, vengeful religion in which your chances of going to Jannah are slim to none. You're probably not going to make it anyway. I mean, look at you. So that's the picture that's painted. And that's unfortunate because it's not what the word of Allah deserves. You have to let the word of Allah speak for itself. Yes, Allah is angry sometimes, absolutely. We already read, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ وَعَلَى أَبْصَارِهِمْ. There are some people who deserve the anger of Allah. But to take that and throw it on everybody is just, that's dhulm. That's just dhulm. That's not what the word of Allah does. So فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. I found something very beautiful written by Ibn Ashur rahimahullah. I'll share it with you about the idea of tawbah. وَالتَّوْبَةُ تَتَرَكَّبُ مِنْ عِلْمٍ وَحَالٍ وَعَمَلٍ. He says the act of tawbah is actually made up of three parts. Tawbah is made up of three parts. You can think of it like an image, an image of a plant that has three leaves. Okay? We're not discussing the roots, we're just discussing what's above the ground. And he says those are knowledge, your state, your condition, and action. Knowledge, condition, and action. Ilm, hal, amal. And what does he mean by that? فَالْعِلْمُ هُوَ مَعْرِفَةُ الذَّنْبِ. Knowledge means you recognize what wrong you've done. You know what you did wrong. That's the first step. Tawbah means you have to at least acknowledge what you did wrong. When somebody says, hey, you shouldn't have done that, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything wrong. Or I know it's wrong, but, and as soon as you add that but, and you justify, then you don't know that you did something wrong. You still see that you were justified. But when you say, I know that was wrong, there is no justification. That's when you truly know that you've done something wrong. An admission of the sin. That's the first step. وَالْحَالُ هُوَ تَأَلُّمُ النَّفْسِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ الضَّرَرِ. And the state is that you actually feel pain because of the harm you've caused yourself or harm you caused somebody else. You yourself are hurt because of what you did. You're disappointed, you feel the pain, you recognize the pain caused to yourself or caused to somebody else as a result of your action. That's hal. So the first was knowledge, the second is the state, your own state of affairs. وَيُسَمَّى نَدَمًا, and it's also called shame or embarrassment or guilt. The fact that you actually feel guilty. How can someone feel guilty and they don't even realize they've done something wrong? They don't even know that they've done something wrong. They'll never feel guilty. So knowledge is first and guilt, the state of guilt, is the second. وَالْعَمَلْ هُوَ التَّرْكُ لِلْإِثْمِ وَتَدَارُكُ مَا يُمْكِنْ أَن تَدَارُكَهُ وَهُوَ الْمَقْصُودُ مِنَ التَّوْبَةِ. And then the action is, for number one, to drop that sin. The action that comes after that is whatever vice you were doing, whatever wrong you were doing, now you're going to drop it. Because you feel ashamed, you won't go back to it again. Or you're going to try to attain what should be attained. Tawbah is done for two reasons. One, you did something wrong. Two, you didn't do something you were supposed to do. Right? So if somebody, for example, earned impermissible income, they should make tawbah. If someone did not give zakat, they should make tawbah. They didn't do something they were supposed to do. So now they have to fulfill that and give it, make up for it. You can't just say sorry. You know, there are people who swindle business partners. Like they 50% partner, walked away with 100%, disappeared for 5 years. And 5 years later he calls the guy back, hey man, it's Ramadan, I've been making a lot of tawbah, I hope you can forgive me. And the guy says, I want to forgive you, where's my 50%? No, I didn't call about the money, I think you should leave dunya behind, we should think about the akhirah, just forgive me. It's like, I ain't forgive you. What do you mean forgive? You're still holding on to you have to make up for what you did and then ask for forgiveness. You don't get to hold on to it and say, look, it's Laylatul Qadr, let's just, you know. So now this idea of, making up for the wrong that's been done, these are the three pieces of tawbah. Now, the next part that I want to share with you about this ayah. This supposed punishment that Adam alayhi salam was given, it's actually, like I keep saying, it's not a punishment, and several ulama have commented on it, that it's actually على طريقة العقوبات التأديبية بالحرمان. Beautiful expression. Allah Azza wa Jal actually disciplined Adam alayhi salam. You know, in English we say, we discipline this child, we punish this child, and it actually means the same thing. It's not the same thing. To punish someone is to make them suffer. To discipline someone is to teach them how to avoid the mistake in the future. If you simply forgive and keep forgiving and don't discipline, then what happens to the one who makes the mistake? They get addicted to making the mistake. Because they get the idea that it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Look, your teacher may be very forgiving, but part of his healthy forgiveness is that he also has to discipline you. I'm not going to fail you from the class. I'm not going to expel you from the school, but you will have to make up these assignments. Why are you punishing me? I'm not punishing you. I'm disciplining you. Punishing you would have been, you're no longer in the school. You understand? There's a difference between punishing and disciplining. What did Allah do with Adam alayhi salam? He disciplined him. He disciplined Adam alayhi salam. He didn't punish him. This is ta'deeb. And what is the discipline that Allah gave him? It's very powerful. He dropped him from Jannah into dunya. By the way, does that mean he no longer has fruits to eat? Does that mean he no longer gets to see any trees? Or gets to see any rivers? Or any mountains? Or eat? No, he still gets all of those things, but they're not what they used to be. Isn't that the case? So he still has rizq. He still has guidance. He still has a connection to Allah. He still has life. He still has a spouse. He actually still has pretty much everything he had in Jannah, but وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. What Allah has is better and longer lasting. Isn't that the case? So you've been given less now. What are we learning about the idea of discipline even when someone's under our wing? Our students are under our wing. Our children are under our wing. When they make a mistake, what's the best way to discipline? Our idea is yell at the top of your lungs and somehow this child will become, لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ, will become righteous if we just yell and scream. The problem with that is children are very good at tuning out very loud voices when they hear them all the time. So as soon as mama's volume goes up a little too high, they're like, here we go again. And they don't hear nothing. They hear nothing. And even the mother will say, are you hearing what I'm saying? And they're like, yeah. They're not. They're not hearing what you're saying. What is the way to truly discipline? Actually is to not deprive, but take away some of the luxuries as a consequence of doing something wrong. And nowadays, man, our children rule us. They rule us. There are children, if you were to take their iPhone away, it's like taking their oxygen supply away. They will make a scene. You can't do this to me. And they're going to bang their face into the ground and I'm going to die, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to do this. I've read letters. I've read letters from children written to their parents. Dad, you took my iPad away. Next time you do that, I will kill myself. I asked the father, what is on the iPad? What is on there? He said he really likes Angry Birds. I'm like, he's one angry bird himself, man. That's crazy talk. The idea of you can't handle even a little bit of deprivation. A little bit is taken away from you, and our children flip out. And you know what we've done as a result? We don't want to touch it. Okay, leave it. We're just going to yell and scream and let them get more and more and more. And we give them and we give them and we give them. And they mess up and we give them some more and give them some more and give them some more. We are going in the reverse direction that was used by Allah to discipline Adam alayhi salam to bring him to the right path. We are actually facilitating the wrong path for our own children. We're facilitating it. We're saying, oh, you ate from the tree? Here's some more fruit. Just don't do it again. And he does it again. Oh, I don't want to make you cry or nothing. So here's some more fruit. This is insanity. This is ridiculous. But that's what we've done. Because we can't handle. It's not punishment or beating. It's hirman. It's deprivation. You don't get to enjoy the same luxuries that you got to enjoy. Some of those are taken away from you as part of your discipline. This is embedded inside the ayah. And this is actually a very powerful way for us to learn. That's how tawbah works. I'll tell you, sometimes Allah Himself teaches that lesson. Sometimes Allah Himself decides that I'm going to teach you how to do tawbah by taking some things away from you, even in dunya. We read Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. One gardener is very wealthy. The other gardener has assets not even worthy of being spoken of. And the gardener who's wealthy, who was proud of his assets and showed them off and assumed that he has done no wrong by claiming that Allah loves him no matter what he does, what does Allah do? Destroys his garden. But he's still alive. He could still plant the garden again. He could still remove the mess after the flood or the earthquake, whatever came, and try to irrigate the land again. The land is still there. His health is still there. His life is still there. What did Allah do? He gave him so that he could learn back that he needs to rely on Allah. So by the end of the story, he says, Ya laytani la mushrik bi rabbi ahada, yani tab. I wish I didn't do shirk with my master. Meaning he made tawbah. Sometimes Allah will take things away just to bring you back to Him. And that's good for you. But when you get too addicted and too entitled to this world, Allah even takes a little bit away, and you and I forget that when He takes away, it's so we can turn back to Him. Like Adam a.s. was to turn back to Him, we go even further away from Him. we go even further away. And that's the way of Iblis. Iblis was looking for entitlement. It wasn't given to him. It was given to Adam alayhi salam, and he went even further away. So you and I are going to have to pick which road we want to take. So now, this last part, Allah Azza wa Jal, when He did tell Adam alayhi salam, that you're going to become wrongdoers, فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. It's something that, what are these words? A lot of Mufassirun say, when Allah said, Allah gave Adam alayhi salam words, what those words are. Some assume them to be the words that are given in Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th surah. Allah describes the same story from a different angle. And there He says, قَالَا رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Very famous dua. Most of you have memorized it. Maybe some of you didn't know that those are actually the words of our parents. The first dua of istighfar in the history of humanity. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Master, we've wronged ourselves. We've done wrong to ourselves. And if you don't cover for our mistakes, and if you don't show us love and mercy, we are absolutely going to be from those who ultimately lost. He mentioned something, Ibn Ashur mentioned something about these words that I'll share with you. وَظُلْمُ النَّفْسِ بِمَعْنَى التَّسَبُّبِ فِي حِرْمَانِهَا مِنْ لَذَّاتِ كَثِيرَةٍ بِسَبَبِ لَذَّةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ. We have wronged ourselves. He means that, Ya Allah, we had the entire Jannah in front of us. And how wrong, what a crime we did to ourselves that we lost all of that for that one silly fruit. Like we ended up putting ourselves in trouble. People run after haram ways of making money or haram ways of earning or acquiring pleasure, thinking that they're going to get something more for themselves. They don't realize when they run after the disobedience of Allah in pursuit of pleasure, in pursuit of more, that the only one they're harming and the only one they're depriving is themselves. Allah Azza wa Jal, this deen He gave us, these guidelines He gave us, are so that we have a better life. He didn't put these guidelines on us so that we would have a difficult life. As a matter of fact, the only things He made haram on us are al-khaba'ith. وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمْ al-khaba'ith. So He could make filthy, disgusting things haram on them, forbidden on them. And He could make the beautiful things, good things permissible for us. Now, finally, inshallah ta'ala, I want to share with you the idea of ar-Rahim. Allah says, إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ in this ayah. When Allah says Ar-Rahim, which we translate as always loving, caring, merciful, these are all acceptable translations of the word Rahim. Why is it here at the end? تَعْقِيبُهُ بِالرَّحِيمِ Allahu A'lam, but one of the hikam in it, one of the wisdoms in it that is recorded, لِأَنَّ الرَّحِيمِ جَارَ مَجْرَى الْعِلَّةِ لِلتَّوَّابِ إِذْ قَبُولُهُ التَّوْبَةِ عَنْ عِبَادِهِ ضَرْبٌ مِّنَ الرَّحْمَةِ بِهِمْ. Allah Azza wa Jal is basically saying He's the one who keeps coming back and accepting your tawbah because He's so much full of love all the time. It's Ar-Rahim is the reason for which He accepts your tawbah. Had He not been Ar-Rahim, He would not have been a tawwab for you. So He's explaining the reason for which He turns back to you. This should be our fundamental understanding of our relationship with Allah when it comes to tawbah. Allah will accept my tawbah because He loves me, because He cares for me. That's captured inside Ar-Rahim. When somebody makes tawbah, they should not say, I don't know if Allah accepted it or not. Shouldn't be saying that. You should not be saying that. When you make tawbah, when you turn to Allah and you say, ظَلَمْتُ نَفْسِي, I've done myself wrong, forgive me, that is it. That means Allah out of His love has forgiven you. Done deal. Don't look back and say, I wonder if it was good enough or not. No. You should still keep making tawbah, but you should never assume that Allah does not accept tawbah. The only people whose tawbah Allah does not accept, Allah tells us Himself, وَلَيْسَتِ التَّوْبَةُ لِلَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. Tawbah is not something that exists for those who keep on doing tawbah and keep on doing sins. So you're eating some pork sandwich, astaghfirullah. I'm sorry, that's not tawbah. I don't know who you're kidding. You can't keep doing the wrong and keep making tawbah and doing the wrong and keep making tawbah and figure, hey, it's like, it's a stain, I washed it off. Another stain, I washed it off. Another stain, no. You can't play with Allah like that. That's not how it works. It's not like every time you say the word tawbah, done deal. No, you have to leave. You have to do your best to leave what is humiliating. Finally, I said finally, that was finally about that ayah. قُلْ نَهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. Allah says, we said, come down from it all together. This is the second time Allah is saying it, not the first time. He's already said it. But the first time He said it, He said, وَقُلْ نَهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. Notice there's no wow here. It's just قُلْ نَهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. This is what's called عَوْدًا لِذِي بِدْءٍ. We're going back to where we started. In other words, it's not a separate, we said, it's going back to that scene. This is a little bit tough to understand. Pay attention and you'll get it. Inshallah, it's something beautiful. The Quran, the storytelling of the Quran is actually close in some ways. We have an easier chance understanding it because, unfortunately, we watch movies. So what happens in movies is sometimes you have a scene, and then they cut to a scene in the future. And then they cut back to the scene in the past. Okay? So they leave the scene halfway, they take you 10 years into the future, and then they take you 10 years back in the past again, and finish that scene. This transfer of, or travel through time is something that actually happens in the Quran all the time. Allah Azza wa Jal was talking to Adam alayhi salam, Hawa salamun alayha, in Jannah, telling them, come down from here. Come down from here. Then the story moves forward, they came down, they're on the earth. Then they come into contact with the words of Allah. Then they make tawbah, Allah accepts their tawbah. All of that was happening where? In Jannah or on the earth? That was happening on the earth. Now let me take you back to Jannah. I'm not done with that scene yet. So we're going back to that scene again. قُلْ نَهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. We said, come down from here altogether. Why go back to that scene? It is as though Allah is saying that when you think about that scene in the world, where I gave you words and you made tawbah, you won't understand what happened and why that happened until you go back to another missing scene from Jannah. So let me tell you that scene, and you can go back to that ayah and go, oh, that's how that works. So what is this ayah? He says, come down from here altogether. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. If and when, especially from me and only from me, any kind of guidance whatsoever comes to you. If you get any kind of guidance whatsoever from me, فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ, then whoever were to follow my guidance, فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Those are the people that are not going to be afraid. They're not going to be, in fact, they're not going to be the ones that are suffering with sadness. This is the promise of Allah, if ever guidance comes to you from me. So he's sending Adam alayhi salam, he hasn't even sent him down yet. And he says to him, listen, as you go, watch out. You're enemies to each other, but let me tell you, and by the way, when you're enemies to each other, what do enemies do to each other? They attack each other. They hurt each other. And you're supposed to be afraid of your enemy. And if your enemy was successful in hurting you, you are sad that they caused you pain. The two feelings you get from your enemy before the attack is fear, and after the attack is grief, yes? Khawf and huzn. Allah says, yes, you will be enemies to each other, but I'm going to give you something that will get rid of those two things. What two things? Fear and sadness. Whenever some guidance comes to you from me, whoever follows that guidance, despite having whatever enemies in the world, the legions of shayateen, the endless kuffar being your enemies, it won't matter. You won't ever feel fear. You won't ever feel grief. That's my promise to you if any guidance comes to you from me. Now go back to the ayah of dunya. What is the guidance that Allah gave him? Allah gave him hope. The first step of guidance is what? Is hope. Is to turn back to Allah and just ask for forgiveness. If you say, what is the call of Islam to the world? What is the call of Islam to humanity? As a matter of fact, it's one simple call. People should ask forgiveness. That's it. That's it. And that's not just here. It's everywhere. You know, Ibrahim alayhi salam is the center of our religion. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fulfilled the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. I'm breaking the surprise to you. The center of the surah is Ibrahim alayhi salam. The center of the surah is Ibrahim alayhi salam. Our entire religion revolves around Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam's greatest contribution is he built the what? The Kaaba. And you know what the purpose of the Kaaba is? That people can come and they can worship Allah and seek what? Forgiveness. When Fath Makkah was promised, the Prophet ﷺ was finally going to clean up the Kaaba once again, open to humanity once again, for the worship of one God alone. Allah says, لِيَغْفِرَ لَكَ اللَّهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِكَ. So Allah can forgive. The middle of Surah Al-Fath. وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. The end of Surah Al-Fath. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْهُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. The entire idea of conquering Mecca and cleansing the house of Allah, restoring the role of the house built by Ibrahim alayhi salam, so people can earn forgiveness. What is your motivation for going to Hajj? What's your motivation? Forgiveness. Everything forgiven, clean slate when you go to make Hajj. The entire religion revolves around this idea. It revolves around this idea. So when we learn here, what is the call of Islam? What is the ultimate guidance of Islam to humanity? It is actually for human beings to want to come back to Allah and apologize to Him for messing up. That if you have that, you have everything. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. You don't have anything. Do you imagine why Rasulullah ﷺ says that he asks Allah for istighfar 70 times in a day and more? Why would he? Because he understands this is the religion. Istighfar is the religion. That is actually when you truly understand Allah as your Rabb and you are His Abd, you are constantly in a state of seeking His forgiveness. You're seeking that. And when you do that, everything falls into place. Everything falls into place. You are filled with hope. You are given protection from Allah. You know this guidance? Allah says, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Now we're learning. In a time of fitna, there are people worried in America, if Trump becomes president, I don't know what's going to happen with the Muslims. I'm already starting to look at real estate in Canada. And there are people that are worried about the state of affairs of the Muslims and the politics that are happening around the world and the policies that are being made and the aggressive attitudes towards Muslims and the way we're being smeared in the media and all of it. We need some kind of protection. Which politician will come and protect us? Which group can come and protect us? Which bloc, which organization, which policy, which advocacy can protect us at the end of the day? Allah Azza wa Jalla is describing that His guidance protects. His guidance protects. And the further you get from the word of Allah, you can be as politically active as you want. You're not going to have protection. Protection only comes from Allah's book. The ones who hold on to it, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They're not going to have any fear. They're not going to have any grief. This is the beauty of the kalam of Allah in these ayat. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. Couple more comments about this ayah, inshallah. This is all we'll do today. Tomorrow we wrap up the entire story and give an overview. It's really exciting, inshallah. But about this ayah, I do want to share with you, inshallah, that when he says فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم, actually you can say in Arabic, إِن يَأْتِكُم. But he says إِمَّا, the ma is زائدة توكيدا, and then يأتي becomes يأتيَنَّ توكيدا. توكيدا in English would mean emphasizer on top of emphasizer on top of emphasizer. So put this in English translation, you would say, if at all, any guidance whatsoever comes to you from me, like Allah did not say that lightly. And He said any guidance. You know what that means? Throughout human history, every child of Adam at some point was exposed to something from guidance. Maybe not all of guidance, maybe not a full book, maybe not the entire Torah or the Injil, maybe not a messenger in the flesh, but some piece of guidance, some little bit of shukr, some little bit of sabr, some little bit of istighfar, little snippets of guidance. Whoever can hold on to whatever guidance they got, then I will protect them. I will secure them. Think about what Allah did for Ashabul Kahf in Surah Al-Kahf. These young men don't know any prophets. They don't know any book. They don't know any book. They don't know anything about the akhirah or angels, or they have no ilm like this. All they know is لَن نَدْعُوَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَهًا. All they know is our king and our town is obsessed with Greek mythology. They worship Zeus, Apollo, Artemis. They worship those gods. We cannot do that. We believe there's only one creator, one master. That's it. That's the only guidance Allah gave them. That's it. They had no other guidance. And can you imagine what Allah did for them? He protected them and He secured them from grief when it was impossible to protect these people. It was impossible to protect them. Now imagine that when they had just one tiny little piece of guidance, all they had was La ilaha illallah. That's all they had. They had nothing else. You and I have the entire kalam of Allah. We have the full speech of Allah that stands tall to protect, that gives us security. And if we fail to seek Allah's protection from this word, then that's our fault. By the way, that promise of Allah, any guidance, إِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. That word is repeating itself, isn't it? Because the surah began, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى. Why is it repeating itself? Allah is actually telling us implicitly that the final installation of that promise has now been fulfilled. As Adam was coming from the heavens to the earth, he was told, look, seek out guidance. Seek out guidance. It'll help you. It'll protect you. And Allah kept sending guidance throughout the ages, throughout the nations. He sent guidance one way or the other. And then finally, the last chapter of Allah's guidance has been sent. And that's this book. And by the way, as an extension of this book, it is the people who carry this book. So if you're wondering, how come the Aborigines don't have guidance? How come the people in the middle of South America don't have guidance? How come the several African nations don't have guidance? How come the European nations don't have guidance? The question is, how come we haven't shared it with them? Not how come they don't have it. Allah is not going to give them like a mobile device and they can download it themselves. Allah sent this ummah. This ummah was supposed to carry it to them. Ibrahim alayhi salam does not complain to Allah, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or any messenger doesn't complain to Allah, Ya Allah, why don't these people have guidance? They knew, my job is to give it to them. My job is to share it with them. Allah has sent this ummah to share the guidance with the rest of humanity. Instead of developing a hatred for the people who have power today, people who have a civilization today, we look at them and we feel bad about ourselves. How come the Muslims are behind and these kuffar are ahead? They're not kuffar, they're human beings. And those human beings deserve the message of guidance. And if they haven't received it, that's our fault. And if we haven't been able to give it to them the way they should have received it, then we have only ourselves to blame. This is فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَن تَبِعَ هُدَى. Whoever might follow my guidance, and that's, in this last minute, whoever might follow it. These could be enemies of Islam. The moment they follow it, Allah's security falls on them. And this has happened before. The Ottoman Empire is supposed to be the pride of the Muslims. The Ottoman Empire, before they became the Ottoman Empire, weren't even Muslims. These were the people who massacred Muslims, and after massacring and making piles of the heads of scholars in the middle of city centers, mass murderers, then Allah gave them the gift of Islam. And those same people became the carriers of Islam for centuries. So the people you think are the enemies of Islam, the only thing keeping them from being the guardians of Islam is the message of this deen. This Islam is not a race, it's not a nationality, it's not a skin color, it's not a continent, it's a message. And that message does not discriminate who it reaches. So there's no race that is condemned and they will never have guidance. May Allah protect us from thinking in this way. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us the carriers of His guidance and bless humanity with the power of this message. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim.